Welcome to the deep dive.
Great to be here.
Today, we're tackling something I know is on a lot of your minds if you're active, creatine supplementation. Specifically, how effective is it really for boosting exercise performance?
Yeah, and we're focusing particularly on active females today.
Exactly. We've gone through quite a bit of research. There's a big systematic review, looked at 27 different studies.
That's a solid base to start from.
Our goal, as always, is to give you the clear, science-backed info. We know your time's precious, so no getting bogged down.
Right, and creatine, it's just so popular, isn't it?
Hugely popular.
But like you said, a lot of the hype, a lot of the studies, they tend to focus on men.
That's the common perception, yeah.
So what we're really digging into is what this big review tells us about how well it works for active women.
Okay, let's unpack this then. This review, it covered a pretty wide range of women, didn't it?
It did. Everyone from, recreationally active people just keeping fit,
Right.
all the way up to elite athletes.
Yeah.
So a good spectrum.
And the studies themselves, they use creatine in different ways, too.
Oh, yeah. Very different. Some were short term, like just 5 days.
A loading phase, basically.
Kind of.
Yep.
Others went much longer, up to 12 weeks.
12 weeks, okay.
And the dosages, the amounts they used, varied quite a bit as well.
So lots of variation to consider. Given all that, what's the headline finding? What's the main takeaway?
Well, perhaps the most striking finding, really,
Yeah.
is that overall, the majority of these 27 studies, they didn't actually show a significant improvement in performance for the active women taking creatine.
Compared to placebo, you mean?
Compared to placebo, exactly.
Wow, okay. So not the clear win maybe some expect?
Not really,
Yeah.
but it's not quite that simple either. It wasn't a complete washout. There were some nuances.
Okay, nuances are good. Let's get into those. This is where it gets interesting, right?
Mm.
Let's break it down by performance type. What about strength and power? Like lifting more, jumping higher, that sort of thing.
Okay, so for strength and power outcomes, the review looked at 11 studies specifically on this.
11, right.
And out of those 11, only 3 actually found a real significant benefit from the creatine.
Only 3 out of 11. That seems really low.
It does feel low, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Especially given the general reputation of creatine for strength.
Absolutely. Okay, what about anaerobic performance then? Things like sprints, high-intensity intervals.
Yeah, that high-intensity short burst stuff, the picture there is, pretty similar, actually.
Oh, really?
They looked at 17 studies covering anaerobic performance.
17, okay.
And out of those, only 4 showed a clear positive impact from creatine in these women.
4 out of 17. Again, quite a small fraction.
It is. So, an immediate thought for you listening might be, maybe prioritize the proven stuff first. Training, nutrition.
Before jumping to creatine as the key enhancer.
Exactly. This review suggests it's maybe not the silver bullet it's sometimes made out to be.
Oh.
At least not consistently for active women based on this evidence.
That's a really important point. What about the other side? Aerobic performance, endurance activities.
That's where the evidence, at least in this specific review, looked even weaker.
Weaker still?
Yeah. Only 5 studies focused on aerobic outcomes.
Just 5.
And out of those 5, only a single one reported any improvement with creatine.
1. 1 out of 5. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That really goes against some of the anecdotal stuff you hear sometimes, doesn't it?
It does.
Do we know why that one study was different? What made it stand out?
That's a good question. Unfortunately, the review itself didn't really dive deep into why that one study showed a positive result while the others didn't.
Good.
Which, kind of highlights the challenge here. When findings are inconsistent like this, drawing firm conclusions is tough.
Right.
But it definitely underlines that we need more research. We need to figure out the specific situations, if any, where creatine might help aerobic performance in women.
Okay, so the general trend seems pretty clear. The big performance boosts often linked to creatine. Maybe not so straightforward for active women.
Based on this large review, yes, that seems to be the case.
Now, you mentioned challenges. The review also commented on the quality of the studies themselves, didn't it?
Yes, and this is a really critical point, I think.
Yeah.
The reviewers noted that, yes, the quality varied, which is common, but a major concern they flagged was that many studies just didn't properly account for the unique physiology of females in their design.
Okay, what does that mean practically? Like, what kind of physiological differences are we talking about?
Well, think about things like the menstrual cycle.
Mm-hmm.
Hormone levels fluctuate naturally, right?
Of course.
That could potentially influence how the body uses or responds to creatine.
And the studies weren't tracking that.
Often not, or not adequately. Then there are potential differences in muscle fiber types compared to men, maybe different baseline levels of creatine stored in the body to begin with.
Oh, okay.
All these factors could play a role. And if your study design doesn't consider them or control for them.
Then it's hard to know if the results you're seeing are really just due to the creatine itself.
Exactly. It muddies the waters, makes it much harder to get that clear picture specifically for women.
That makes total sense. You can't just assume what works for one group works identically for another.
Precisely.
The review mentioned other issues too, right? Things that made comparing the studies difficult. Heterogeneity.
Heterogeneity, yeah,
Yeah.
that's the term. It basically just means the studies were different from each other in lots of ways.
Okay, like how?
Well, we already mentioned the participants' different activity levels, training backgrounds.
Right, recreational versus elite.
Exactly. Then, how they measure performance wasn't always consistent. Different tests for strength, different ways to assess anaerobic capacity.
So not comparing apples to apples.
Not always. And, as we touched on earlier, the creatine protocols themselves. The dose, how long they took it for. It was all quite varied.
So all these differences between the studies, it makes it tough to just add up the results and say, this is the definitive answer.
That's exactly the problem. You have variation in participants, tests, and the intervention itself.
Which leads to?
Well, the researchers conducting the review concluded that the evidence base, the amount of research specifically on creatine in active females, is still, well, relatively small.
Still small despite 27 studies being reviewed.
Relatively speaking, yes. And when you combine that small base with the variability, the heterogeneity we just talked about, and the fact that female physiology wasn't always well considered, it just means our understanding here is still developing. It's not fully mature yet.
So the bottom line here for anyone listening, particularly active women considering creatine, is that while it's super popular, the science behind its impact on your exercise performance, it's currently more limited, less conclusive than it might seem for men.
That sums it up well. The current science suggests you probably shouldn't rely on it for broad, guaranteed performance gains.
And the research really needs to catch up, doesn't it? To understand those nuances better.
It absolutely does. We need studies designed with women in mind from the start.
So just to recap then, while some individual studies in this big review did show some benefits in strength, power, a few in anaerobic, that one in aerobic.
Right. There were some positive findings.
The overall picture, the majority finding, was no significant improvement compared to placebo.
Correct. The majority didn't show those expected gains.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? It suggests that, look, creatine might be helpful for some active women, maybe in specific contexts we don't fully understand yet.
Possibly.
But those widespread claims, big improvements across the board, that seems like an oversimplification based on the current evidence, especially concerning female physiology.
Yeah, the science is still working to figure out the details. It's not a closed book.
We definitely need more high-quality research, specifically designed, like you said, considering female physiology properly.
That's the key to getting a clearer, more accurate picture moving forward.
Okay, so wrapping up. This deep dive shows the evidence for broad performance boosts from creatine in active females isn't as strong as for males.
Some potential benefits noted, but mostly not significant effects found in this review.
And remember, the research is varied, and we need more studies focused specifically on women.
That's a great summary. It really highlights the complexity.
Which brings us to a final thought for you to consider. Given these findings, right, this limited, somewhat inconsistent evidence, what does that mean for how you approach supplementation? How do you evaluate strategies to enhance your own performance?
It's a good question to reflect on.
It really underscores that the science is still evolving, doesn't it? And maybe a personalized approach, perhaps talking things over with health or nutrition professionals is the way to go.
Could be the most effective path.
Thanks for diving deep with us today.